There is a number being whispered in boardrooms, printed in financial journals, and celebrated by economists right now. That number is $84 trillion. According to major financial analysts, like Cerulli Associates, over the next 20 years, the baby boomer generation is set to pass down approximately $84 trillion to their heirs and charities. They are calling it the Great Wealth Transfer. The media is painting this as a golden age for millennials and Gen Z, a moment where the struggle finally ends. Student loans get wiped out, and the younger generation finally gets their piece of the pie. It sounds fantastic. It sounds like a mathematical inevitability, but I'm here to tell you that it is a statistical lie. You are not witnessing a transfer of wealth. You are witnessing the final stages of a consolidation of wealth. Most Americans believe they are waiting for an inheritance. In reality, they are standing on the tracks of a financial freight train that has been building momentum for 50 years. If you look closely at the data, not the headlines, but the raw data, you realize that this money isn't destined for your bank account. It is destined for the healthcare system, the taxman, and the balance sheets of institutions that are designed to absorb capital, not distribute it. To understand why this windfall is a myth, and to make sure you don't end up on the wrong side of history, we have to look at the engine running this machine. We have to look at the currency itself, because what is happening to the US dollar right now has happened before. It happened in Rome, it happened in 18th century France, it happened in Weimar Germany. It is a four-stage pattern that destroys the middle class every single time it plays out. And the terrifying part, we are deep into stage 4. The mechanics of the heist, the Cantillon effect. Before we look at history, we have to understand the weapon being used against your savings. It's a concept called the Cantillon effect, named after the 18th century economist Richard Cantillon. We are taught in school that inflation is like the tide rising that when the government prints money. All prices and wages rise together, so it all balances out. That is false. Money is not like water, it is like honey. When a central bank creates $1 trillion out of thin air, they don't drop it from helicopters into your backyard, they inject it into the top of the system. They give it to big banks, financial institutions, and the government. These insiders get to use that new money first. They use it to buy hard assets, houses, stocks, gold, and land at yesterday's prices. As they buy, the prices of those assets rise. By the time that new money trickles down to you in the form of a slight wage increase or a stimulus check, prices have already doubled. The rich got richer because they got the money first. You got poorer because you got the money last, after it had already diluted the purchasing power of your paycheck. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It is the mechanical function of a fiat monetary system. It acts as a silent tax, siphoning purchasing power from the working class and transferring it to the asset-holding class. And this mechanism is the primary reason why the great wealth transfer unhappened the way you think. The currency itself is being weaponized to erode the value of that wealth before it ever reaches you. The historical echo Rome and France lets prove this. Let's look at the blueprint. Every major civilization that relies on a currency eventually faces a choice: austerity or debasement, pain now or death later. Politicians always choose death later. Look at Rome. In the 1st century AD, the Roman denarius was the reserve currency of the world. It was 98% pure silver. It was trusted from Britannia to India. But Rome had a problem. They had a massive military budget, expensive infrastructure, and a populace that demanded bread and circuses, free food, and entertainment. Emperors like Nero and later Commodus couldn't pay the bills with tax revenue alone. Raising taxes was unpopular and dangerous, so they chose the hidden path. They began clipping the coins. They took the silver out, melted it down, mixed it with cheap copper, and minted more coins. By the time of Emperor Gallienus in 268 AD, the silver content had dropped to less than 5%. They increased the money supply, but the money was trash. The result? Hyperinflation. Prices in Rome didn't just double, they went up by thousands of percent. The Emperor Diocletian tried to fix it by issuing the edict on maximum prices, imposing the death penalty for anyone selling goods above a certain price. It failed. Merchants simply stopped selling. The economy collapsed. The middle class of Rome, the shopkeepers, the soldiers, the farmers, were wiped out. The only people who survived were the elite, who owned the massive farming estates and paid in gold, not the debased currency. You might think that was ancient history. Okay, Let's jump to 1790, Revolutionary France. The new government was broke. They confiscated church lands and issued a paper currency backed by that land called the assignat. At first, it worked. The economy buzzed, but the government got addicted to the free money. They printed more and more. Within 5 years, the inflation rate was 13,000%. There is a famous quote from that era by Andrew Dixon White. He noted that while the printing press was supposed to help the poor, it ended up being the most terrible instrument of their impoverishment. The wealthy moved their money into foreign currencies and art. The working class, holding the paper, starved. The pattern is identical. Stage 1, sound money builds trust. Stage 2, government overspends and debases the currency. Stage 3, inflation accelerates, destroying the middle class. Stage 4, a total reset of the system, where wealth is consolidated by the elite. The turning point, 1971, and the debt spiral. Now, fast forward to the United States. We followed stage 1 perfectly. After World War II, the US dollar was backed by gold. It was the good as gold standard. But then came the Vietnam War and the Great Society welfare programs. We spent more than we had. The French and the British noticed we were printing more dollars than we had gold to back them. They started asking for their gold back. So, on August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon changed the world. He temporarily suspended the convertibility of the dollar into gold. That temporary measure is now 53 years old. The moment the gold tether was cut, the discipline was gone. Look at the charts from 1971. Before that year, productivity and wages grew together. If the country got richer, the worker got richer. After 1971, productivity kept going up, fueled by technology. But wages flattened out. Where did the difference go? It went to the asset holders. It went to the stock market. It went to the Cantillon insiders. Since 2008, this has accelerated into madness. To keep the system alive after the housing crash, the Federal Reserve printed trillions. Then, during the pandemic, they printed trillions more. We are currently sitting on a national debt of over $34 trillion. We are adding $1 trillion to that debt every 100 days. This is mathematically unsustainable. Interest payments on our national debt are now higher than our defense budget. There is no way to pay this back. The government has only 2 choices: default on the debt, tell the world we are broke, which would cause a global depression; inflate the debt away, print money until the debt looks small. They will choose option 2. They always choose option 2, and that means your savings account is the fuel they will burn to keep the engine running. The wealth transfer reality check. So, let's go back to that $84 trillion great wealth transfer. Why is it a lie for 90% of people? First, look at the distribution. Of that $84 trillion, a massive chunk is held by the top 1% and the top 10%. If your parents aren't in that bracket, you aren't waiting for a windfall, you're waiting for leftovers. Second, we are living longer than ever. This is a blessing, but financially, it is a drain. The cost of end-of-life care in the United States is astronomical. Assisted living can cost $8,000 to $10,000 a month. Memory care is even higher. The generation that holds the wealth is going to spend the vast majority of it staying alive. That money flows from the family estate into the healthcare industry and the pharmaceutical complex. It is a transfer, yes, from your family to the medical system. Third, think about asset inflation. But by the time you inherit it, what will a loaf of bread cost? What will property taxes be? Because the government is debasing the currency, the nominal value of the house goes up, but the real value is stagnant. However, the government taxes you on the nominal gain. They call it capital gains. If you inherit that asset, or if your parents sell it to give you the cash, the taxman takes a massive cut based on profit that was really just inflation. The government created the inflation, and then they tax you on the inflation they created. It is the perfect loop. The middle class is squeezed by this. The ultra-wealthy. They have trusts, foundations, and offshore accounts. They borrow against their assets to avoid selling them. They understand the game. The great wealth transfer is really just the middle class liquidating their assets to pay for survival, while the elite consolidate, the reset, and the digital cage. We are approaching the end of the debt soup. Stage 3, repeat inflation and loss of confidence is twitching to life. What comes next is stage 4. The reset. Throughout history, when a currency dies, the government introduces a new one. In France, they replaced the assignat with the mandat, which also failed and eventually went back to gold. In Germany, they introduced the Rentenmark. Today, the solution being prepared is CBDC's central bank digital currencies. Governments around the world are realizing they cannot control the debt with the current banking system. They need a system where they have total visibility and control. A programmable currency. If the great wealth transfer happens within a CBDC system, it won't be freedom money. It could be money with expiration dates to stimulate spending. It could be money with negative interest rates. This sounds dystopian, but it is the logical conclusion of a fiat system running out of road. It is the ultimate consolidation, becoming your own central bank. This information is heavy. It can feel paralyzing, but it shouldn't be. The pattern of history serves as a warning, but also as a map. Once you know the train is coming, you can get off the tracks. The people who survived Rome, France, and Weimar weren't the ones hoarding the currency. They were the ones holding real value. Step 1 is education. You must unlearn the idea that saving cash is safe. In a high inflation environment, cash is a melting ice cube. Step 2 is asset allocation. The wealthy do not hold cash. They hold equities. They hold real estate. They hold precious metals like gold and silver, which have survived every currency collapse in human history. And increasingly, many are looking at decentralized digital assets like Bitcoin as a hedge against central banking irresponsibility. You don't need millions to start. You just need to stop thinking in terms of dollars and start thinking in terms of purchasing power. Step 3 is debt management. Do not be a slave to variable rate debt. The system devours those who owe it money. The Great Wealth Transfer is a headline designed to make you complacent. It tells you to wait for a savior, to wait for mommy and daddy's money. Do not wait. The system is designed to intercept that money before it gets to you. You must build your own ark. You must become your own central bank. The history of the world is a history of wealth transfer, but it usually transfers from the unaware to the prepared. Which one will you be? If you want to dive deeper into how to protect yourself during a currency reset, watch this video next. And remember, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Make sure you're listening to the rhythm.